So I'm gonna to kind of set the stage. I'm gonna probably walk you guys through a little bit about the agenda. So I'll tell a little bit about myself, about my journey, and I'll use my experience as well as my some of the key parts of my experience that reflects on how I became. I like to think how I became a professional engineer, but also I'll tell you what professional engineering made me do as a professional engineer, what my strengths became to be, and how I become to be who I am today. But again, I welcome any questions. I'm going to give you obviously an opportunity to ask questions and hopefully enough time to do so. And I'm typically very transparent and very upfront. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to help you, assist you. Okay. So like some of you, or probably like most of you, I was not born in Canada. So I was born actually in Khartoum, Sudan, in Africa. It's an African Arab country. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I traveled with my family, just the way it is when you live in these developing countries. Our parents go out and look for different opportunities across the world to, give us an opportunity as their children. After that, I reached Canada in 2001, where I started my education in Rice University, a little bit of a pre-university kind of getting. At the time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into engineering or something else. Coming from that background, our parents only give you minimum choices. Either you're a doctor, an engineer, or something. Apparently, a pilot at the time was something very special. So, but engineer is the choice I ended up going with. I graduated in 2008 with my undergrad, and from there I kind of started pursuing my career in different avenues. I think every professional engineer's journey is unique. At the end of the day, what do you make out of that in journey, right? In 2008, I worked in consulting for about 2 years, then left consulting for sort of a medium-sized large engineering firm, and I went to Rogers Communications. I was actually recommended by Rogers to basically work for the consulting firm at the time for as a new grad. And I thought that was actually the best experience, because if I jumped right away working for a large company, I think I would have missed an opportunity to learn some of the consulting background that I gained in the first 2 years of my career. After that, I spent a good amount of time for Rogers. I was lucky to have good mentors, good managers. I think you're gonna hear that a lot from me today. As you grow your career, or as you're progressing your career, having the right people in your path, whether they're partners, mentors, networks like this, right? It comes a long way, especially in this part of the world. I had a really good manager with a couple of mentors. Ended up doing my master's, graduated from my master's, decided that I think I could come up with an invention and start a company from that. And at the same time, started a consulting firm, raised a good amount of money, a couple of $1 million, and traveled the world, went to Japan and Korea, presented in Japan and Korea in 2016. Also took the business to back to the Middle East, and a little bit some work in Northern Africa. But at the end, when we determined that technology has reached its capacity or capability, and having a whole bunch of investors and decision makers to my company at the time, decided to get back into research, and that journey was finished. So this is where I am today. Today I'm at a research center in southwestern Ontario, in the Niagara region, where I'm working in a more high tech than I think over the last 12, 15 years of my career industry. We're basically developing robotics automation solutions to deal with reducing the cost of labor in the horticulture or farming industry. So very exciting for me at this stage. So I like to think this is 40 years of my sine wave. For those of us that are engineers, the sine wave, ups and downs. So life, a journey is always ups and downs. So you live and learn. Now, the reason why I'm bringing my education, really, I don't think it's anything special about my education, but I think every part of where I spend time learning has given me a foundation to make me a professional that I am today. For example, I was lucky that before I came to Canada, I went to English schools, what helped me build a really good foundation in communication in English. And in this part of the world, at the time, and 20 years ago, I came from a Middle Eastern country or an African country as well, and Arabic was the main language. So, but I was lucky enough to study in English schools, and help me coming to Canada. I didn't have to were about bridging the language gap. So I didn't appreciate it as much being in a younger age, but as I went to university, took jobs, coming to a multicultural environment like Canada, right? You could really appreciate the privilege it gives you, obviously. So the foundation of the English language came through my high school education and before that. Then during my degree at Ryerson, as an electrical engineer degree, bachelor's, I like to think there I build the fundamentals of being an electrical engineer, learning how to take a thesis, get deeper into the theoretical part of my engineering. But I was obviously missing the practical at that time. But I think a big part of the foundation for the electrical education that I gained was through Ryerson. After that, through my career, I decided around 2014 to go back and do my master's. But I didn't want to do just a technical master of science. I did a master of engineering and a master of entrepreneur innovation degree. So it was a sort of a business slash engineering degree. But this, because it was not a special, it wasn't a focused electrical masters or a science-based masters. I had the opportunity to take on a project, build a company from it, and learn both business principles as well as technology development. So for me, that master's degree at McMaster helped me build the foundation as a technology development and in entrepreneurship. So I think my education, gave me a foundation in different parts of my professional upbringing. So I've also spent some time over my career as a consulting engineer in different companies and different responsibilities. So as I think I mentioned earlier, that the first 2 years of my career out of university undergrad, I spent 2 years as an electrical designer with Morrison Hershfield. I think that was one of the best hands-on period of my life because I got to work, I got to be mentored technically. So this is the part of my life where I actually had a lot of mentorship. I was allowed to make a lot of mistakes as a young engineer, using theoretical to use it as practical. And it was exciting because whatever you learn in university, sometimes you don't know if you're going to use it in the real world. And as an electrical designer, I was ambitious. I wanted to do hands-on. I wanted to take on difficult problems, take on more responsibility. That's always been my approach. Again, having the right senior engineers to report to, or managers or mentors, has been really important for my life. So they've helped me look at be involved in a variety of projects I've done from electrical distribution to basically controls to wind farm, a little bit of alternative energy, solar designs, outside plant engineering. And I used to wonder, I was like, why is an electrical engineer worrying about some of the civil components of running fiber or running electrical conduits or penetrations? But you learn in the real world, in the practical world, you have to develop a little bit better than just the electrical component parts, so the calculation and stuff like that. So that was very important for my career. Another part to this, and I think I mentioned it because if you want to become a professional engineer and you look at the criteria of becoming a professional engineer and why as part of PEO they ask you for the practical experience, but as well as building that level of experience, especially at least 1 year in Canada under the right mentorship, you see that you appreciate it through that experience. Now, about in 2015, I started my own company. Part of that company, it was really two main businesses. One was the technology that I patented and invented, and I raised money for. And the other part was actually taking business out of my time at Rogers and basically doing engineering work for them as an engineering firm. With at that point, I was 7 years into my career, roughly. But I've already decided that I think I can lead projects and take responsibility. And I was already a PNG at that time. So the consulting engineering experience at that time, you're now fully accountable. You're the principal engineer, what we call it in the professional industry. So you're the last neck. You're the person stamping these drawings. You're making sure the quality is great. You're the one dealing with it's your company. You don't have another manager ahead of you on top of you that will watch over you and deal with the customer. But as an engineer at that level, you're not on doing the technical stuff, but you're mentoring engineers and senior engineers, but you're also responsible for the customer relation. And that's also a big component. Being a small firm, you don't have the privilege of a large firm to have a variety of projects. We're very focused around telecom, DC power systems, electrical AC power systems, distribution, all that kind of stuff, HVAC. So mostly mechanical, electrical projects, and specifically on the data center and telco environment. After that, as my company wind down, I did some work with an alternative energy or renewable energy company, mostly in the battery and distribution, power distribution, more on the upstream of the utility transformer coming into the building or into a land or into a factory. So I spent some time there. Again, a lot of the skills as an engineer are transferable. I haven't done at the time battery design at that level. I've done DC battery design at the data center level, 48 volts, 480 volts. This is now 1,000 volt plus. You're dealing with much larger numbers, larger distribution, obviously lower amperage because it's higher voltage. And I spent some time there learning. Obviously, there's a learning curve, but within a couple of months, I was obviously stamping drawings, working with them, and taking the responsibility. It was more of a senior PM role, as well as building a line of business with them. So another part of being a professional engineer, I like to think of as you grow, and you'll see that in the PEO's requirements as you build your experience record, is the project management experience. And for those of you that have pursued PMP, I mean, this is where people realize that now they can go in and apply for a PMP designation under PMO. Sorry, PME. I'm not sure what the organization is, but Mohammed might correct me in a bit.
PMI.
PMI. Thank you. Yeah. Correct. So I've actually considered that throughout my career, but at one point you realize, like, if it's how many letters do you need next to your name, and how much more studying do you want to do? And you tend to focus based on time. Time becomes more valuable as you get older. So I've decided not to pursue my PMP, but it's a challenge for sure. And congrats to the people that have it. So still doing the work as a project management again, and I have Rogers in big here. Rogers has been a very fundamental part of my career. After consulting Morrison Hershfield 2 years, I moved back to Rogers. Again, I was lucky to have the right mentorship, the right partners, the right colleagues in the company or outside the company, and I kept my relationships with my previous consulting company, and I built other relationships. So over that first 2 years period at Rogers, I was more of a design specialist, and I was building. I was heavily focused on building my background in the DC telco environment and in the distribution and mission critical facilities. I really enjoyed it very much. I was learning, but I was building, actually, if you think about it, because I was very much in a big company like Rogers. Rogers has its own standards, it has its own ways of doing things, and now all your telco, DC data center design world becomes Rogers standard. So everything that you benchmark to the standard that you live and breathe by on a daily basis. I was lucky enough to be in a technical role where I work with hundreds of engineers, tens of companies, and you learn. So being in Morrison Hershfield, I learned the Morrison Hershfield way. Being in Rogers, I learned how Morrison Hershfield does their engineering. I learned how M does their engineering, which is now WSP. I learned how Smith & Anderson does their engineering. So I learned a variety of ways of different firms that do their engineering. And obviously, at the end of the day, we're all for the purpose of doing these projects. After that, as I became a little bit more senior, I took on more responsibility, more projects, more money to spend, and I became more high level. I didn't focus anymore on the detailed design, on what's down there. I was more focusing on the concept, big picture, developing new standards, developing new ways for others to build their data centers, and so forth. My other project management experience included, again, my time in SunGrid, as I mentioned. After I went through the learning curve, I took more of a PM, higher responsibility role. So, you make a choice as a professional engineer, how much technical do you want to keep doing? So I've seen some fantastic professional engineers, 30 plus years, still in a senior engineering role. That's what they enjoy every day. That's what they enjoy doing. And that's what they want to do, is continuous design. And I've seen others that move into management, capabilities, and I've seen others that move into completely different responsibilities, more operational. So that's the privilege we get as engineers as we grow our careers. Another part of this that I think is unique to my career is product development, right? Most of the engineers that, get involved in system design or these large construction driven in design engineering, careers, tend to stick to that. And once in a while, they tend to get involved in contributing to product development with big vendors. It might not be substantial, but I was lucky enough that I was inquisitive to want to get into more product development, want to understand how these things are put together. So I was lucky at Rogers to have enough budgets and enough ears to listen to me. So being in a company like Rogers, I had vendors come to me and say, if you want to do things differently, we'll work with you. We'll do whatever you want. You give us the napkin sketch and we'll go and do it the way you want it, because they want Rogers to buy it in tens or in hundreds of quantities, right? So I was lucky to get involved in designing a few things, and that's what I enjoyed the most. And if you look at my previous slide, as I moved away from the technical, building design, I got more engaged into the technology design, into what new switchgear should we use here? Can we redesign the switchgear to do better things, reduce the cost of labor? Always with the benefit, and in developing a new data center standard as well, based on some new technologies. Also, as part of my growth, as I mentioned earlier, I kind of went to developing a new technology. So I wanted to do something completely different that I felt that I couldn't do at Rogers, that it was probably too crazy for the industry at the time. And I like to think that this kind of made me a sort of the father of micro data centers. It's called micro data centers. So an all-in-one cabinet with power, cooling, and infrastructure, intelligently controlled using machine learning. And I spent a good amount of time in university developing the concept over 2 years. I learned, I got very much involved into some of the cooling design, developed some capabilities there, but and more on the control side. But my strength has always been the power. So I had to obviously partner with other people to help me finish the design. So it was an exciting time. It was a great part for me. Now, as I exited from CNOS, I focused on technology. I realized that I really enjoy technology, and I realized that I wanted to get into high tech technology. And we're in a time that is quite unique. I don't know how many of you are now obliged to work from home, staying away because of COVID and what we're facing in a very special time here and in different parts of the world. So the industry that I'm involved in deals with food security. So production of food, there's already a challenge in this part of the world to basically do farming, because you can't find the labor resources to do it. So it's expensive. You have to bring them from abroad. So in Canada, we bring resources from all over the world to help us with farming, from Mexico, from Eastern Europe, and we still can't find enough. So the industry decided that a few years back that the best way to deal with that problem is to basically automate it, put more robotic solutions in these places. So Vineland started a $10 million cluster that basically deals with that capability. So basically developing technologies using, if you recall from my previous experience, it was mostly power, cooling, controls at a signal, at a basically a systems level. But this is now I'm dealing with more of a component level, dealing with things in vision systems, dealing with a lot more deeper machine learning, what we call deep learning. And so it's less systems and more components to develop a bigger system. There's still components that are complete, but it's a very high tech industry, clean tech industry in a more dirty environment. So that's where I am today with this product development experience. Another part of this, I want to highlight some of the projects that have been key. And I think if you look at the PO requirement on how to basically fill in your experience record, the requirement is to talk about some projects that you've done in that, and to highlight the different areas that you've contributed to it. So whether it's applying the theoretical background, whether it's communicating or running the project, or how you contribute to the project. So I'll highlight a few projects that I felt would be relevant to give you an idea. And I think it gives you a background. Is I'll try to share with you some of the different parts and of the project that I contribute to and who I work with. So give you guys some background. So one of the exciting projects that I did through my career after building data centers the same way every time traditionally. I decided that with a really open-minded team that I had in that organization to go after a new concept. The concept was container-driven data center. Data centers and containers was not new. What was challenging as an engineer now at that level when you're doing concepts, I couldn't bring just a container and put one of our technicians in the container to basically manage the equipment inside the data center. That was not something that met the organization requirements. So because containers were available, so we had to redesign the concept of containerized data centers, right? In a way that meets the requirements of the company that I work for, meets the requirements of the technicians that work on these data centers day in, day out. So we went through nearly two-year concept/design approach, work with multiple engineering firms, work with what we call stakeholders inside the organizations, technicians, communication, technology providers. So in these containers, in data centers or in the telecom environment, you have switches, you have other components, communication equipment that goes into these racks. So work with these providers to understand the limitations, the capabilities, because we were completely redesigning the concept with an objective of reducing the cost of deployment, and as well as making sure that it fits the needs of that company. So as an engineer at that level, you're now dealing with the problem from a different point of view, but your technical background never goes away, because as you are dealing with addressing ideas at the table, you're going to be the sort of the backstop to make sure that if there's something that they say that is not reasonable from an engineering point of view, from an electrical point of view, or from your understanding, from a concept point of view, you will be able to say, no, as an engineer, these things don't make sense. At a high level, it's not reasonable. Maybe we'll do it this way. So as an engineer, you grow as a professional engineer. And when you get into these roles, you start using your engineering expertise that you gain over time to basically, deliver on different opportunities. So again, this was exciting for me as a project that I've always liked to mention, because we took a concept, as you see here in Revit, and transfer and build basically a 10,000 square foot data center in 5 days. 5 days, and this was exciting. So putting all these containers together and finishing them. So this was quite. I genuinely believe this was probably one of the first fully deployed containerized this kind of style in Canada, as far as I understand from the partners that we work with. And this is what the site looks like today. So it was actually 60% manufactured. The problem that we're really trying to solve here from my team point of view is to reduce the cost of construction. And we felt that there's always a saying in construction. And for those of you who are there today or been there, change orders are just the way it is. So change orders means that once you finish a design, I've never seen a perfect design in my world, but let's say you have the best design possible, you send it out for construction, you will always have change orders no matter what. So, that was a problem. I took it personal that no matter how good the design is or how much you involve the construction companies in the design process, you still end up with change orders. So I felt that if we could take some of the standard stuff and put it in a factory environment, that would reduce the cost of construction. It's all about, at the end of the day, your contingency. So if you ever have a 20% contingency or 10% or 5% contingency. So I believe that helped us reduce make this more and more closer towards those numbers. Another part to my career as an engineer, as I mentioned, is technology development. And I'll talk a little bit about the micro data center. And this is, again, being an engineer, and taking your engineering background. So I always thought about myself that if I ever wanted to start a company, I didn't want to start a company that's outside my career, my technical training. Meaning that I didn't want to, if I was an electrical engineer, I didn't want to go start a business in finance, as an example. If I was just so good at dealing with money, it doesn't matter. I felt that I needed to do something to do with something that I learned and my background, all the investment that I put into my education time, not just money, but I felt that that's the approach that I'll take on. So again, taking from my education as an electrical engineer, from my career as a data center, from data center design and mission critical facilities, and then building on that container concept that I built. The problem that I was trying to solve was, how can I actually move a data center to a factory environment even more? And how small can I go? And the concept that I ended up inventing was the micro data center, a fully integrated, all-in-one, taking everything that is in a small, what we call server room or small room for IT equipment, and put everything that you need in a cabinet size concept. So I went through concept design, some things that were off the shelf that I didn't spend time on redeveloping. You make a choice, again, as an engineer, you make a choice. Do you want to spend time designing electronics for UPSs, or do you spend time designing how these things work together? So as an engineer, and based on experience and based on understanding what the problem is to solve, um, a lot of the innovation or and I'll show you in the next couple of slides, a lot of the uniqueness about my cabinet was not actually the electrical, because the electrical is really it's so UPSs, electrical distribution. There's not a lot of opportunity left for innovation. A lot of the opportunity was actually in the cooling, as well as in the controls and the monitoring and how everything works together. So I found as an electrical engineer that the biggest problem I was trying to solve in my cabinet was more cooling. So I spent a lot of time learning and working with a lot of mechanical engineers like Mo. So again, these were the values that were the benefits that we're pitching. If you take everything that you can and deploy to the smallest possible footprint, you minimize the cost of construction. You don't have to plan for day 100 in day one. You do it really fast. If it's in the factory floor, you just pick up and ship and install, and then you can actually take it with you, and you spend only what you need. Another thing that I got into, again, like as I mentioned, I didn't spend time designing anymore the UPS, or the uninterruptible power supply, or the battery system. I spent time redesigning the sensors, because I need them for controls to create an environment. And this is really wasn't because I wanted to make it unique. It was actually because of a problem I had. When I took a data center and took it from a room environment, and for those cooling HVAC engineers would know this better than I do, if I take this and I put it into a much smaller footprint, if the cooling unit fails, right, it will actually, the rack will get hotter faster and the equipment will fail faster. In a bigger volume environment, it will take longer if a failure happens, if you compare apple to apple for a failure scenario. So I needed much more sensing capabilities. I needed to build a smarter sensor where I can quickly turn on and modulate basically the temperature inside the rack. After that, I had to develop a completely different cooling unit, because I realized, one, for cost, off-the-shelf cooling units were too big and too expensive, right? But also, this was actually the technical problem for cooling. People will probably understand this, cooling engineers. The problem was that, again, in a closed rack environment compared to a room environment, a cooling unit, we call them crack computer room air conditioning units, or CRAS, right? These coolings are designed for large rooms, right? They're designed from a room environment where the temperature change, or what we call delta T, is based on supply and return in a large room, for the air to take as much time to come back to the cooling unit. But now the cooling unit is inside the rack in an area that is very small compared to our room environment. So, we had to completely redesign the cooling unit. I work with a research center, McMaster, to do this, and some industry people, and then I design and build the cooling unit in China, actually, to be honest with you. And I brought it back here and assembled it here. And at one point, we were actually able to basically deploy this cooling unit, with a partner, with a large manufacturer as Hammond. So if some of you that knows Hammond Manufacturing, it's an 85-year plus at the time. It was, I think, 2 years ago. They're a really large public company that actually standardized on our cooling unit. So not only did the cooling unit became useful for the micro data center, but also became useful for other applications. Now, where am I today? So again, as an engineer, this is the experience that you go through, and how much technical is how much it's what you get involved. Today, I'm in a much more high-tech environment. I don't have, and I'll be honest, my technical expertise will probably not give me the strength for this job that I have today, but it's more of the operational, more of the management expertise. I know how to build technical teams. I know I can understand problems. I know how to solve these problems. And this is really what engineering is about. Do you know how to solve a problem? Can you access the result of the problem? It's not like university where, you're taking exams and you have to learn these things before you go. as a professional, you can always have access to new technologies, to resources, to learn about a new way of doing something, to mentors to help you solve a problem that you never solved. So you have access to this. I like to call it open book engineering. But I mean, the basic principles are always going to be there for you. So today I'm in much high tech where, I'm dealing with high tech vision systems, using algorithm to detect movement and using robotic arms to basically manipulate crops, and also, to be able to drive watering decisions, autonomous approach again. So this is where basically my career took me. So I hope this is not too fast, or I hope it give you guys an idea. And I think really what I was trying to get with this presentation is give you guys an insight to the journey that you can take as an engineer, and coming from different parts of the world at different stages in your life. So I understand that some people start at university, some people start beyond university. But today I spent a lot of time over the last couple of years hiring engineers who are international as well as local. And this is the things that you look for when you're hiring: the experience, their capability to their capability to basically solve problems, their communication skills, or how much of a learning curve this is that you can help them with. Mentorships, mentors. But I would think about the number one thing that I look for engineers, whether it's senior or especially senior engineers: communication. It's very important to be able to articulate, because I think you can solve a lot of problems by going back and researching them, and if you have enough time. But being able to communicate it, articulate it, train, share with the customer, share with the people that you're are bringing up as professional engineers is important. So that's all I had. Questions, feedback, you're more than welcome.
So thank you so much, Hossam, for sharing your experience with us. And okay, if anybody wanted to ask any question, so let me help you to unmute yourself. Hold on a minute. Okay, so who is the first person to ask question? Okay, so let me ask my question. So Hossam, as an entrepreneur and as a person who is dealing with hiring new immigrants, what are the first three things that you wanted to see in them? When you're hiring them, when you are interviewing them, what do you want to see? What do you want to, what kind of things that you are try to assure yourself that this person is capable of doing it?
That's a good question, Mo. Thank you for asking it. So I've had the opportunity to hire for different kinds of positions. So I've had the opportunity to hire for my time at Rogers when I was in a very ICT or data center environment. I will also had the opportunity to hire for a technology company, and I also had the opportunity to hire now for a research environment. Excuse me. So obviously the first thing you look for is when you're scanning the resumes are relevant experience to this opportunity. So to what you're hiring them for. So if you're hiring somebody to fill in a position, as an example, and I'll use a real position in Rogers. At one point we were hiring for a design specialist. In Rogers, these positions are multidisciplinary, meaning that we look for electrical, mechanical, civil, any of these engineering backgrounds, as long as they have experience in data centers, excuse me, or telecom, or facilities design and building. So that's the first thing you look for technically. Excuse me. And then after that, from there, once you bring them on board, if they don't have relevant experience, excuse me, sorry, you look for communication. I think a very important part of hiring anybody is communication, because if you're bringing somebody in a intermediate to senior role, you want to know that they can translate the technical part to other people, whether it's to consultants they're working with, whether it's to resources that are junior to them, reporting to them, or it's to basically customers who have no understanding of the technical stuff. So communication. So technical background, relevant experience, and communication. I think these are the three main things that you look for basically when you're hiring. And again, I've done that in that mindset, and I do it now in a research role. You look for the education if you're in a research environment. You look for if they have the technical expertise or some sort of relevant experience in automation, robotics, and you want to know that if they're a senior role, if they can communicate, articulate it. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Okay, next question. If you don't have any question, I have a couple of them.
I have one.
Sure, go on.
Hossam, why related experience is important? Because, for example, me, I have experience in another area, but I like to switch from this area, for example, data center. But I don't have any experience. What should I do?
Ilham, that's an excellent question. Excuse me, sorry, something's stuck in my throat today. But this is an excellent question, Ilham, because if you look as an example, and I want to correct myself. When I mean relevant experience, it doesn't have to be specific. Sometimes it doesn't have to be specific in the industry. Let's talk industry, right? So if you look at my background, yes, Rogers was telecom ICT, but again, this right now role is a research. It's a completely new industry. It's agriculture or horticulture, we call it, right? I asked, and one of the things they asked me in the interview, even me when they hired me, they're like, "Are you a data center guy?" I said, "No, I'm a technology guy." Mm-hmm. So it's how you identify yourself. So you're right, Ilham. The way you position your resume is if you're moving from one industry to another, you need to position your resume as industry doesn't matter. Tackle the more important points, right? So if I may ask, are you electrical, mechanical? What is your background in engineering?
I'm civil engineer.
Civil, again, what do you, and I have my understanding for civil, some people separate civil between structural and the capabilities. So again, you identify based on the job is, for example, are you trying to fill a project management role as a civil engineer? Also, let's say you want to be a project engineer or project coordinator. You position your resume as more of that managing projects, doesn't matter what they are. Even in your previous background, you talk about how you manage projects, how much the value of the projects, the teams that you work with, multidisciplinary, right? How you did your reporting. You tackle the aspects of the job. It doesn't have to be industry. So you always have to get to it. If you submit a resume that is cookie cutter to what you've done in the other industry, typically does most of the time hiring people, recruiters see that and they realize that you're not catering to the job. You just sending me a general resume. I hope that helps, Ilham.
Yes, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Some during this pandemic, time, how did you find the industry? I think there are lots of projects are kind of like freezing, and the competition is getting way heavier than before. Is that right?
That's correct, Mo. I totally agree with you. So if you look at last year compared to this year, I have heard that there's been a lot of basically freezing on projects. But the other thing that I learned that some industries are actually, unfortunately, sadly, whether it's true or not, benefiting from the pandemic. Because if you think about industries where now you need more, to build more healthcare, or as an example, the moment that hospitals were filled up, a lot of container providers started building container hospitals, right? So now there was a lot of push for construction for container hospitals, right? And then, when everybody was working from home, a lot of telecommunication companies started building more pipeline for internet, right? And that comes with civil engineering, telecom, electrical, mechanical. So opportunistic sometimes, yes, there is a pandemic, but you see growth in different areas. And that's what you need to pay attention to. So if you're following and you want to pay attention to, I'll say there's a lot of need now for network communication, whether it's fiber or wireless. So there's still a big hire in there. I'm seeing a push there. And I'm also seeing engineering firms that are being involved in that work, and construction companies. I'm also seeing a big push in construction in these modular environments and in public health. And also in obviously where I am today in horticulture or farming and security. And I've seen also a lot of push there, obviously.
Next question.
Excuse me, I have a question about resume.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation first. My question is that sometimes you tailor your resume to the description of the job which is advertised, but and your resume go to the recruiter or manager, but usually all of us have the LinkedIn profile. They can check our profile, and at that time the manager would understand, okay, the resume is maybe fine with this job, match with this job, but the reality of that person, when he saw the profile, all the previous background, was like, oh, there's a big red light here. You know, it's kind of honesty or disrespectful. I don't know which one is better to tailor it, the resume. It would be good, so you will pass the first step, but for the next step, you will face a problem.
And
I think we should ask this question from the HR managers. Is that right, Hussam?
100%. And I'll tell you something. Number one, never lie in your resumes, because if you get caught, it's a big problem. So yes, the conflict of interest, 100%. So the applying process for a job is I like to think it's an active process. It's not a lazy process. I will always advise people, I can tell a lazy application from someone who really wants a job. Because a lazy application, you'll find mistakes. They will give you a job that doesn't match. Their LinkedIn will not match. You're 100% right. And sometimes they will not be lying. They just might have not updated, right? So something's not lying. So my recommendation for you, if you can match them, match them. But because we apply for so many jobs and there's so many opportunities out there, and as an engineer now, you can just work in so many different areas. Sometimes what makes the difference is the cover letter. So in the cover letter, very important. I can tell you, I'll be honest with you, I didn't give the value of the cover letter as much of other people, but I've learned that a lot of people give a huge value to the cover letter, because in the cover letter, the truth is, the most of the time, I'm never going to read all your resume, or most of the time people are not going to read all your resume. They're going to read what they're looking for. They're going to see they're looking for specific things. But your letter, 90% of the time I'm going to read it, because it would tell me about you. And you can tell me in your letter that, yes, your resume might not be reflective, but you've highlighted the important points that reflects the job. You can tell me why you want the job. But and also the cover letter is actually unique, because it's kind of the first level of conversation between you and I as a hiring manager before we get to meet. Sometimes you feel that you know the person by personality, but through the cover letter, right? So I agree with you. Try to be consistent between both. Don't lie. If a job doesn't fit you, you can say in the cover letter why you think you're a good fit for it, as an example, right? But don't lie. Never lie. Never confuse, because if you get caught, it's worse. And some people tell you resumes are sometimes exaggerated. As an example, did I really do 250 million plus projects, or did I do 10% of that? I mean, these are questions that people ask. I can tell you, I've gone through a little bit more than that. So, and these are the questions. So people, most of the time when they take resumes, they assume there's a little bit of exaggeration, because as a human being, you want people to appreciate what you've done, right? So you tend to say a lot about yourself. As engineers, we could be humble as well. Never forget that.
Thank you.
I hope it helps, Amir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the rest of your name.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Cheers.
I told him you need to turn it to Amir, because nobody can read this one.
May I ask you, how do you pronounce your name, Amir? How do you pronounce your full name? Sorry, I'll try to learn it.
Amir, how are you?
I can't, I'm sorry.
Oh, Amir, that's
I'm really sorry.
No
May I ask a question?
Go ahead, Reza. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Sam. Thank you for your great presentation, and thank you more for give us this great opportunity. And working for some companies, it's a somehow completely different lifestyle and action by comparing working for yourself. This is two complete different stages. How did you overcome the problems from transmitting from or transferring from working for others to your own business? What was your initiatives?
It's a good question. They actually asked me this in the interview. They asked me, how would you feel working for a boss when you were the boss? And you know what my answer always be? You're never the boss. Because even if you have your own company, your boss is your customer. They tell you what to do at the end of the day, right? My mindset has always been, you know, I'm there to serve the customer needs. Yes, nobody can tell me what to do, but if the customer tells me reasonably jump, I'll say how high. So my mindset is, at the end of the day, is my customer my boss or my boss my customer? So that's been my mindset. And I don't have any issues. I don't have ego issues where I can work for people. Also, for me, from my company, I raised a lot of money, whether it was a good choice or not. I ended up having a board of directors, which became my boss. Then I ended up having a chair, which became my boss. Then I had like 30 investors, who became my bosses. So I had more bosses as an entrepreneur than I had as in working for other people. I don't know which one is better, Reza.
Thank you.
Okay, can I ask you something?
Yes, please ask.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Wait, I have some problem. And after that, I want to ask a question. Wait for a second. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Everybody hear me right now? Because
Yes.
I have a... Okay. Hi, everyone, and thanks for sharing your experience, dear Hussam.
Cheers.
Because of my background, I want to ask a question about my background, because I want to know how much the focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning can help business grow. And in your experience, what is the most logical way to develop personal research and create a new market? It's my first question. And after that, I want to ask you another question. My next question is, whatever depends on the technology provided by Google or someone like this is positive or not, because I want to use some technologies in artificial intelligence like TensorFlow. Google developed it, and I want to know it's good to use this technology to grow our idea or business or not.
So is your name Arham? Is that how you pronounce it? Okay, thank you, Arham. So your question is fantastic, and I'm going to admit something. I don't have a lot of the background that you have in machine learning. So a lot of my background in machine learning is around deep learning. I don't know if you know deep learning.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So this is where I spend a lot of time. So I'm very focused. Again, as an engineer, there are so many tools that you have in front of you. You choose the tool that works for you for the time that the thing you're working on. So I don't know. I know of TensorFlow, but I spent really focusing my understanding, and it's not application. Like you cannot put me in front of a computer to do a machine learning algorithm. I can't, but I can get you the team that can do that. So I can't answer about the Google part, but in the research, I'll give you a little bit, and I hope it helps you. So today, I mean, I've done different types of research. I've done research. I've done some deep learning research with teams, not me, myself, in data centers, so cooling and airflow and all that. But also now I'm much more engaged in this team that I'm running in Vineland. So a lot, what areas, you're asking what areas? Deep learning, I hear it all the time. So deep learning, using numerical modeling, so using math to solve optimization problems with deep learning. I think that's the way to go. So today, my team at Vineland, one of the things they do is, for example, picking mushrooms. A human can pick mushrooms. Actually, let's use another example. Use the cucumber. I'm sorry about this. Today, humans can pick cucumbers at 1 cucumber per second, roughly, right? We're trying to build a robot to do it within a reasonable...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So we're trying to build a robot that can pick a cucumber. Let's say 8 seconds per 8 seconds per cucumber on average, over a much longer period that a human will spend. And you know, the payback makes sense. So that's why it makes sense. So we're using deep learning. We're using actual vision. So in machine learning, we're using to train the cameras, the algorithms to be able to see the cucumber. We're using special cameras. So this is really the research aspect of machine learning that I'm involved in, not more than that. And I apologize.
If you don't mind, you know, let's focus on professionalism and specifically on job market in Canada.
Sure.
And, you know, because there are lots of like questions, and I know Hussam has a vast knowledge about almost everything, but sure. let's keep it that way. don't go to the deep learning or okay. So thank you so much. Okay, so I think we can answer 2 more questions if you don't mind. Amin, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
First, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm wondering if you have any recommendation or suggestion for recent graduates with pretty much no job experience in Canada, especially in the pandemic. It's kind of difficult to find jobs and network with people. So if Hussam has any recommendation for us, that would be wonderful.
Lovely. So new grad, again, it's been a while since I've been a new grad, but there's a lot of opportunities right now for new grads in different areas. I've seen openings if you're in construction background, meaning if you do electrical mechanical, if the industry is not important for you as a new grad, meaning you don't care, you'll get into construction, you'll get into research, make a very generic resume, apply for this research, there's areas in research. I've seen they're hiring a lot of new grads there. In construction, drafting positions, to gain the experience, to get in. I've had people that work for me, as new grads who finished university, and they couldn't get any engineering designing positions, and they apply for drafting positions. So my advice will be is apply for positions that might be technician driven, so you can learn some hands-on, and bridge that gap. So leave your options open. That's my advice to you, especially if you're struggling to find a job, right? Don't be afraid to take something that you feel as an engineer is below an engineer, because you learn a lot from these jobs. So as a technician, as a drafter, and we all have to learn how to do it at the end of the day. So that would be my advice to you. If there's anything specific and you see something of interest, or let me know, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll let you, if I can help you, I will try.
Okay, thank you. So a following question. So for example, I worked in HVAC and energy efficiency. If I want to go to construction, one of the questions that usually come up in interviews, they ask, why are you changing your field of interest? Why are you switching to construction? Which is basically my answer would be, I'm not changing anything. I'm just, broaden my field of experience and interest. What's your recommendation on that? Like, how can I bridge the gap between my resume and the kind of jobs that I want to get in the future?
I actually agree with your answer, and I'm surprised the person didn't receive it very well if they haven't. I think the fact that you said that as a new grad, that you want to broaden your experience and learn about different areas of expertise using your basics, right? I think that's a great answer. It's really what people are looking for, that agility, that flexibility. Maybe you can focus on your strength for the job. So again, focus on your soft skills. So yeah, if the person doesn't see, they see that you definitely switching industries, focus on the soft skills, focus on being a fast learner. If you are, focus on being agile, focus on working hard, focus on the other skills that can complement everything else. I'll say emphasize, look for the kind of manager. I always say, read the manager, read the hiring manager. Most of the time they say, you're more than welcome to ask questions, right? Or, if they start, I like interviews where the hiring manager gives you a background about the team and the company. If you get a chance to say, before we start the interview, do you mind telling me more about the position? Some people might do. Most of the time, I've been with people that didn't do it. They'll say, I'm hiring for this position for these reasons, and this is the kind of team, this is the kind of organization. But you can also find this information on the website. So you can find the company values on the website and talk about these values. Say, I have these values. Most of the companies say hard worker, fast learner, agile, all this great stuff. A good person, can work with everybody, and focus on these values and say, this can complement what I'm doing. So I think your answer wasn't bad. I just think maybe you need to expand more on the soft skills if you have not.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, last question.
Shall I have another question?
Of course.
Sure, go ahead.
Could you please explain more about the opportunity you mentioned about research in construction industry?
In construction or research? No, I meant two different things. So
research in construction.
I brought them together by mistake. If I did that, I apologize. But there is research and construction. There's organizations that do, I mean, universities. If you want to get into research and construction, look out. There's a lot of professors out there that are doing research in different universities. So if you, civil engineering, Ryerson is a good school. You'll find they're doing research and construction. And I don't know much of it. Depending on the industry, you'll find some areas in I don't know if McMaster is more robotics and mechatronics, stuff like that. But Ryerson, I know, obviously UFT, look for positions that are looking for summer students or open positions as well, that I know. I don't know much. When I said research, I meant to say research and construction.
Oh,
but construction, I apologize.
Thank you. That was my best. Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay. So thank you again, Hossam, for everything that you've done and, for your time. Really appreciate it. I know that you're a super, super busy person. I always, wondering how you could find some gap in your calendar. Believe me, if you see his calendar, you will be really surprised. He's always full, always red. So thank you so much, for find a gap in between your calendar and dedicated to Fanalaran. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we will have you again here with us. If any other questions you can ask, otherwise we can finish this meeting. Any other question? Okay, so thank you so much. Have a great night. Thank you. Thank you, Hossam. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.